We've got Mr. Shashi Tharoor back on the line with us. Thanks so very much for being with us. I thought we'd go point by point in some of the key aspects of the budget. So let's first look at what the government points out is a record infrastructure spend. CapEx has gone up 9% to 12.2 lakh crores for the financial year 2027. So infrastructure-led growth, they say, is a priority, and that remains. How do you look at that?
Well, I think we've got to really look at the numbers beneath that. I mean, what does this consist of? For example, we've heard them talk about MSMEs, right? They're going to create these champion MSMEs. But if you look at the economic survey released the previous day, it talks about credit risk as the biggest challenge, pointing to a 30 lakh crore credit gap, concentrated lending, limited progress on cash flow-based credit. So how on earth, with these structural constraints, can you truly expect to see MSME growth and formalization? So you really have to worry about what the government has in mind. They can give big banner headline numbers, but I'm not quite sure I see where the substance is going to be when you actually get into the
three cities as city economic regions, as an example, is how presumably this CapEx would be targeting, or well, what this CapEx would be targeting.
I'd like to see more detail than that. I mean, I have a lot of cities in my state of Kerala. Is there a city economic region in Kerala? If so, how is it defined? What sort of projects are coming in? The budget document is very skimpy on these details.
The next point, tax simplification and the new act. A large part of Part B of what the finance minister spoke about had to do with ensuring that it's easier to pay taxes, that legal action would not be taken in many cases. There's always a settlement process. And in a sense, it encourages people and companies to go out and pay their taxes. It's a simpler process. Would you welcome this?
It's a simpler process if you have the money in your pocket to pay the taxes. The big worry we have is the middle classes have had a terrific income squeeze in recent years. They have to rely on debt to meet expenditures. Salaries have not grown at a significant pace. And the truth is that people don't have money enough left over for health, life insurance premiums, emergency expenses, once the EMI payments and the household staples are taken care of in any typical month. So the fact is that there is a real crisis, for example, of credit card debt. There are real challenges we're facing when it comes to the fact that a lot of consumption in India is taking place on borrowed money. There's some ridiculous 2.9 lakh crore in dues and 10.5 crores in credit cards in use. I mean, it's just astonishing in our country at this point where debt has become a normal way of spending. So the taxation system may be simpler, but it doesn't actually put money in the pockets of the Aam Aadmi. And yes, corporations are doing perhaps all right or better. Some things have been done to make life easier for them, and that's important if they generate growth. But is it trickling down to the ordinary Indian taxpayer? The answer is probably no. And then from the point of view of all this tax language in Part B, what is going on with devolution of finances? They have refused to change the figure from last year. Kerala, for example, which has seen its share of the tax pool declining from 3.93 just in the previous Finance Commission to 1.93 now, we are looking at a particularly dismal situation when it comes to having enough money to spend in the state. So, I mean, the taxes, again, you can have a headline saying simple taxes. Again, look at the reality in the lives of the ordinary people and the lives of the states.
Fiscal consolidation. The government, the finance minister says she's met her target. They've targeted a fiscal deficit of 4.3%. That's down from 4.4% the previous year. And the long-term goal is to bring the debt to GDP ratio down by approximately 50%, plus minus 1%. Again, yeah, it is an area where statistically... Okay, go ahead.
No, statistically she's fine, except for one thing. I've been serving long enough in this parliament to remember her predecessor, Arun Jaitley, talking about bringing the fiscal deficit down to 3.5%. We've had to scale the numbers up considerably since the late Arun Jaitley passed on. And it's now, you're expecting us to applaud and celebrate 4.4 and 4.3, whereas the target 10 years ago was supposed to be 3.5.
The defense budget, we face challenges to the north, to the west. It's gone up by a record margin. Would you again welcome this? Or do you feel that it's not enough? Or do you feel that we need to have spent the money elsewhere?
No, I've been arguing that it's a matter of great concern. If you remember my last couple of budget speeches in Parliament, I pointed out to the fact that defense allocations are becoming lesser as a percentage of GDP in the past. So the fact that it's gone up significantly in this year's allocations, I'm very impressed. But at the same time, the defense capital expenditure being raised is important in terms of the stronger emphasis on capability building relative to revenue costs. But if you look at nuts and bolts stuff, there's a reduction in allocations to the Air Force's requirements. There's a reduction in allocations to aircraft engines. So it's not as if it's all good news, but it does seem as if they have finally corrected the declining trend in defense expenditure. Perhaps after Operation Sindoor, they've realized we need much more money in defense. And I think that's something we can all support. It's just that they shouldn't have cut where they have cut.
I understand your focus on job creation. I understand your focus on the need for every last citizen to have more in their pocket. When it comes to job creation, healthcare and biopharma are important. Biopharma generates jobs, and healthcare obviously is important for all of us. The minister is focused on cutting customs duty on 17 critical drugs, including those for cancer and rare diseases. A, do you welcome that? B, the focus on biopharma Shakti, as she referred to it. It's good for our industry, and again, it's an employer. Is this something that's positive?
Yes, it potentially is relatively positive, but the fact is that it does look like crucial sectors in the health, education, agriculture, social welfare areas have nonetheless been cut. Education in particular has taken quite a blow. And if you look at the SC, ST, OBC scholarships, they have really been slashed. So there is a real concern here. The other problem is how the budget is promising to create a new cadres while refusing to care for the existing ones. So we have over 10 lakh ASHA workers. In fact, there are 30,000 of them in Kerala. They're holding up India's public health system, and these workers are being treated still as volunteers, paid a meager honorarium of some couple of thousand rupees a month. I mean, literally 2,000 to 4,000 is the average scale, supplemented by irregular task-based incentives. They have no minimum wage, no pension, no job security. So you can talk about creating a new set of caregivers. When will you take care of the existing ones?
A final question, and you know this as well as anybody, we live in a very difficult geopolitical reality now. We have a fairly tumultuous equation with the United States. We have signed a very positive trade deal, I would suggest, with the European Union. Given the fact that we face potential shocks all around us, do you not see this budget as being one of continuity and therefore one that's realistic to the challenges we face externally?
Yeah, I'm not one of those persons who says that everything that is wrong and that nothing good can be seen. Continuity, some stabilization. Some of these are the terms I want to see coming out of it. Mind you, we all know the Sensex has reacted very badly to the budget, and that can't be good news at the whole. As an MP from Kerala, I'm deeply concerned about the neglect of my state, which is something that truly troubles me. And I think that's even more astonishing in an election year. It looks like, given that the ruling party doesn't seem to have much hope in Kerala, they've just decided to neglect it altogether. And to my mind, this is really unfortunate because a budget is meant to serve the entire nation and is meant to serve all states. And I think the government has been embarrassingly selective in its choices. It's also, frankly, been underwhelming in its performance. Even some of the things you were praising, like fiscal deficit control, has come at the expense of significant expenditures by cutting expenditures in crucial sectors, including capex. So we can't really cheer the fiscal deficit in its own right out of context. So I do want to say there may be good things, as you pointed out, Vishnu, but there are a lot of things that are disappointing as well. And for the bigger part, I'm afraid the disappointment outweighs the case for applauding either stabilization or responsibility or continuity. Those are vague terms.
Sure.
They actually also continue injustices in the Aam Aadmi's pocket. Yeah.
A final question. Several states going to the polls say that there's nothing in the budget for them. Now, you were talking about Kerala. Do you believe that, allocations have deliberately gone down to your state with elections just around the corner? And Pinari Vijayan says the move is to take minerals from Kerala. How would you react to that?
Well, that's something I've advocated. In fact, I did an article on NDTV.com at the beginning of the year, pointing out the extraordinary amount of rare earths and other minerals in the sands of Kerala that are remaining unexploited while we're importing all of these things. So that's something that I'm quite willing to welcome. But I do want very, very much to point out that last year at this time, we remember how many SOPs were offered to Bihar, how often Bihar was mentioned in the budget, with the full knowledge that election was looming in that state. Here there are 5 states where elections are looming. One would have thought the government cared enough, but perhaps they don't see their own chances in those states highly enough, and so they don't particularly bother about catering to our needs. I mean, this is not right, and I think it's really, really disappointing. We are importing so much, for example, of our pharmaceuticals, our active pharmaceutical ingredients used in the kind of generic drugs we produce to serve as a pharmacy to the world. And there's no real solution to that. Our dependence on China has been increasing in so many areas. Where are the targeted schemes to reduce our dependence on areas like active pharmaceutical ingredients and other things? There's too many omissions here to be entirely happy about all of this. I myself was chairman of the Standing Committee on Chemicals and Fertilizers at one point, and we had talked about the fact that these NIPERs, the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Education and Research, ought to be expanded into the south. Now, the government has announced that there will be new NIPERs. Nothing has been said about putting them in the south, even though the existing NIPERs are all in the north. I mean, we really need to do something serious about actually reaching out with a budget that benefits all Indians in all parts of the country, in all states.
All right, Shashi Tharoor, quite critical of various aspects of the budget, not all of them. But thanks very much for sharing your thoughts on, it's an important budget. Let's see where it leads us. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. All the best.